Mosaic, a daily news program from Worldlink TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Peace be upon you and welcome to the News in Brief. Today, Washington and London presented a draft resolution to the Security Council to lift the sanctions on Iraq, thus giving them full authority to keep the oil revenues for at least a year. Meanwhile, France demands that the United Nations play a vital role in rebuilding Iraq. The U.S. President will give a speech tonight presenting a plan on the Middle East, including establishing a free trade zone between the U.S. and Arab countries within the next 10 years. U.S. Special Forces consisting of 4,000 soldiers, together with the Iraqi forces, are working to implement order and security in Baghdad. Nabil Abu Rudaineh, the top advisor to Palestinian President Yasser Arafat, says that Sharon's claims that he is ready to negotiate with Syria is a way of playing games to put pressure on both the Palestinian and the Syrian sides.
I'm ready to negotiate with any Arab country, including Syria, and without preconditions. Of course, the Syrians will have their demands and we will have our demands as well. But we are ready to sit and discuss these issues.
5 Al-Qassam missiles were fired at the Fiderot settlement in southern Israel. A member of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade was martyred in an operation near the Kfar Darun settlement. A Palestinian man and his wife were injured during Israeli incursions in Deir Balah. A massive explosion shook Kabul while the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Richard Armitage was on a visit to Afghanistan. Armitage assures Afghani officials that the U.S. administration is dedicated to rebuilding Afghanistan.
The leaders of Poland, France and Germany moved on Friday to heal a damaging rift over the war in Iraq, pledging at a trilateral summit in Poland to deepen cooperation on foreign policy and defense. In a statement, Poland's President Alexander Kwasniewski, French President Jacques Chirac and German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder said their consultations also have the objective of speeding up the development of civil and military capacities in the framework of the European security and defense policy. The statement added that the talks were aimed at strengthening the strategic partnership between the European Union and NATO. The statement came during the trilateral summit in which Poland, one of Washington's closest allies in the Iraq campaign, set out to placate France and Germany, the war's most bitter opponents. Set to join the European Union in a year's time, Poland has been anxious to mollify France and Germany, two heavyweight members of the bloc. Israeli troops raided a West Bank headquarters used by pro-Palestinian foreign activists on Friday, detaining 3 women, 2 Americans and a Palestinian, and taking away computers and files. The raid took place in Beit Sahur near Beit Lahem. Israel said it would adopt tougher policies towards foreign activists after a British self-sacrificer and his accomplice attacked a Tel Aviv nightclub last week. Military sources confirmed Friday's raid and said the army would now oblige foreigners entering Palestinian-ruled Gaza to sign a waiver absolving Israel of responsibility for their safety. In a separate incident, the Israeli occupation army on Friday demolished 7 houses in the central Gaza Strip, making 80 people homeless. And in Ramallah, Israeli troops arrested a member of the Fatah movement, whom they claimed attacked 2 Israeli soldiers at the start of the Palestinian uprising almost 2 years ago. A large explosion was heard in Kabul during the visit of U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Richard Armitage to the Afghan capital Friday. The blast shook houses in the Afghan capital's upmarket, Wazir Akbar Khan district at 11:50 Greenwich Mean Time. The cause of the blast was not immediately clear. Armitage stopped off in Kabul on Friday for a brief visit to declare Washington's long-term commitment to the fragile war-torn nation. During his few hours visit, Armitage held talks with President Hamid Karzai and top Afghan officials. Following the meetings, Armitage said Washington did not support an appeal by UN Special Representative to Afghanistan, Lakhdar Brahimi, for international peacekeepers to be deployed outside Kabul. He asserted that US combat troops would not leave the country until the Afghan government and its people felt secure. The US envoy is en route to New Delhi from Islamabad to encourage a burgeoning peace bid between the two arch rivals, India and Pakistan. In a related development, India on Friday test-fired an air-to-air missile from a site in the eastern state of Orissa. The press trust of India news agency said the missile, named Astra, had been tested from the integrated test range at Chandipur. The agency said the missile was powered by solid propellant and had a strike range of 25 to 40 kilometers. Meanwhile, Indian Deputy Prime Minister Lal Krishna Advani urged Pakistan again on Friday to end cross-border infiltration into Indian Kashmir and dismantle separatist training infrastructure in the region.
Israel continued its aggressions against the Palestinians on the eve of U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell's second visit to the region, during which he is expected to press Palestinians to end their intifada and discuss with both the Israeli and Palestinian leaderships the so-called roadmap to peace. Today, Israeli occupation forces demolished 7 houses in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza Strip. A man and his wife were moderately injured during the demolition process, and 80 people were rendered homeless by the demolition. Several acres of farmland were also razed in the same area. Thursday night, a Palestinian fighter blew himself up when he detonated an explosives-laden car into several military vehicles at a checkpoint close to the nearby Jewish settlement of Kfar Daram. The operation was claimed by the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigades. It named the martyr as Mahmoud Saeed al-Anani. In other developments, Palestinian resistance fighters fired 5 Qassam rockets from the Gaza Strip towards Tedrod settlement. Israeli military sources said 5 settlers were injured in the shelling, and late Thursday a mortar rocket landed close to a military base, while a second landed at a settlement in the Gaza Strip. This came hours after the killing by Israeli occupation troops Thursday of 6 Palestinians in Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Palestinian fighters opened fire at an Israeli car close to Aboud village northwest of Ramallah in the West Bank. And the Israeli radio said the occupation forces were conducting searches at Tulkarm camp. They have also arrested 2 Palestinian citizens in Bethlehem and several others in El Khalil. Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon said he was prepared to resume talks with Syria without preconditions. Sharon told Israel TV Thursday that the Syrians will, of course, have demands on the Israelis, and the Israelis will have for sure demands on the Syrians, adding, quote, "We are ready to sit and discuss these issues." Sharon reiterated his claim that he received 3 indirect messages from Syria, including its willingness to carry out negotiations.
I'm ready to hold negotiations with any Arab nation, including Syria, without preconditions. The Syrians will of course have demands from us, and we will have for sure demands from them. We are ready to sit and discuss these issues. We reached an agreement that we must wait a number of weeks to not interfere with the American pressure on Syria or Lebanon for necessary steps for the security of Israel.
The Israeli Premier is due to meet U.S. President George W. Bush in Washington on the 20th of May to discuss the internationally backed so-called roadmap. A source at Sharon's office said the two would also discuss the situation in the region after the U.S.-led war on Iraq. And US President George W. Bush and the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, talked about advancing the Middle East settlement process and about the Iraq war. Bush expressed his optimism that advancement and the progress for peace can be made with the new leadership for the Palestinian Authority. As for Iraq, Bush praised the Emir, who was in a visit at Washington, for joining Bush's coalition against Iraq. In return, Al Thani reiterated Qatar's support for the United States and thanked the administration for its economic support. Qatar currently hosts the US Army Central Command, where the war against Iraq was directed.
Yeah, of course we're going to make progress. Yes, we'll make progress, absolutely. And the reason why we make progress is that the Palestinian Authority has now got a leader in the Prime Minister who has renounced violence. And he said he wants to work with us to make the area more secure. He understands what we know, that a peace process will proceed if and when there is a concerted effort to fight violence. And one of the things I'll be talking to His Highness about, who, by the way, is very active in this process, is how do we work with the Arab world to encourage the Arab world to assume its responsibilities of stopping the funding of terror and to working with the Palestinian Authority to encourage the habits of democracy and freedom with the Palestinian Authority. So I'm very optimistic.
Our correspondent in Baghdad reported that strong explosions were heard overnight in the Iraqi capital. Witnesses said that US helicopters had in fact bombed several houses overnight suspected of harboring Iraqi officials. They told our correspondent the bombing continued for some 3 hours. And amid the political vacuum, US officials admitted 2 US soldiers were killed on Thursday by Iraqi gunmen in Baghdad, as opposition leaders were meeting with US occupation officials to set up an interim leadership for the country.
A month after occupying Iraq, U.S. occupation troops continue to be subject to daily attacks by unidentified Iraqi men. A top U.S. official acknowledged on Thursday that 2 U.S. soldiers were shot dead in separate attacks in Baghdad. The first occurred when an Iraqi sniper shot dead a U.S. occupation soldier in the head east of Baghdad, and the second took place at the Diyala Bridge south of the Iraqi capital, where an Iraqi man approached and shot dead an occupation soldier at close range. Later on, U.S. troops blocked the new Diyala Bridge to investigate the circumstances of the shooting. U.S. officials acknowledged that troops were overstretched in parts of the country and that they were taking advantage of the post-war power vacuum.
I will say that I have an expectation that we will see rough behavior in this country for the foreseeable future. We will be up to it, and our people will continue to do their jobs.
In more military developments, the U.S. Marines said that 11 of its infantry troops were injured, at least one seriously, when an explosion took place on board an assault warship in the Arab Sea. The incident is still under investigation. Meanwhile, civilian demonstrations in the holy city of Najaf expressed the mounting anti-U.S. sentiment as citizens are struggling to lift the U.S. guardianship off their city's administration. They condemned the return of former regime's employees to the city's administrative offices. They also expressed their discontent of the U.S. appointed mayor, whom they called war criminal and who was tightening the grip on Najafis. They submitted a statement to the U.S. occupation forces demanding them to remove all forms of imposed civil administration officials and instead make free elections to choose their real representatives. On the other hand, a grouping of 5 leading Iraqi political parties agreed on Thursday to expand by including 2 more parties, Ad-Dawa Shiite Party and the Liberal Democratic Party. They also agreed to step up security coordination with U.S. occupation forces. Leaders from the group met U.S. Administrator Jay Garner and top political and military aides in Baghdad and said they would push ahead with a national conference to form an interim government by late May. For his part, Patriotic Union of Kurdistan leader Jalal Talbani told reporters that 4 parties had agreed to join the organizing committee planning a national congress that is due to begin by the end of May, by which a government will be formed and the political void after Saddam would be filled. He named them as the Ad-Dawa, the Iraqi Islamic Party, the Communist Party of Iraq, and the Arab Socialist Movement. But it is still unclear how long a future interim government would run the country before an election is held, or when the United States and its allies would be ready to hand over full power.
Jordanian medical team is back home from Iraq after completing a first round of vaccinations of Iraqi children and students in the town of Rutba. The Jordanian doctors carried out the vaccinations at the orders of His Majesty the King, with 80% of the vaccinations completed. A second round is due to be conducted next June. Local Iraqi officials and tribesmen saw off the doctors and hailed Jordan's aid to Iraq. They asked for more medicine and food to be sent into the town, which, like many Iraqi cities, was facing a severe shortage. The head of the medical team said his staff supplied the Rutba Medical Center with special refrigerators to keep vaccines to adapt to power outages. UN Security Council members met to discuss a proposal by the United States and Britain to end 12 years of sanctions against Iraq and give them control over its oil revenues. In Baghdad, US administrators said the trade embargo must be lifted soon to kickstart Iraq's shattering economy. In effect, the draft resolution relegates the United Nations and other international institutions to an advisory role with little power. It was likely to face at least some resistance from the leaders of the anti-war front, France and Russia. The United States and Britain want a vote by June 3rd. On that date, the Oil for Food program, which gives the United Nations control over Iraq's oil revenues and allows them to buy food and medicine, needs to be renewed. Without adoption of the resolution, no Iraqi, US or UN entity in Baghdad has the legal authority to export oil and raise revenue for Iraq. Pakistan's Ambassador Munir Akram, who currently holds the rotating presidency of the Council, said it will take a while before a vote can be held.
The Jewish population in Baghdad is only 40 people. Most of them are seniors. However, the Jewish Beit al-Taifa says that the number of Jews has increased in Iraq, especially over the past several years. Our correspondent in Baghdad, Wafa al-Jubai, visited the Jewish Beit al-Taifa and gave us the following report.
We had lost all hope. Then the door opened, and a man in his 30s came out. He said he was the guard. Our negotiations with him to enter the house succeeded. There is nothing out of the ordinary here, except for this Hebrew writing, indicating the nature of this place. We are at the only temple of the Moses sect in Baghdad. This door was the only obstacle between us and the only temple dedicated for the Jews in Baghdad. Our attempts to enter failed, so we accepted what the guard would allow us to do, which is to tape in the courtyard. Then, in an unexpected surprise, the guard brought out Mr. Tawfiq, one of the Jewish seniors tired from old age.
I served the Torah for 58 years, but then I fell ill. And this brother here does everything now. He is an honest guard.
Here, the Star of David disappeared behind an iron curtain, the same star that witnessed the days when the Jews were big landowners. However, the migration of many of them to occupied Palestine in 1948 deprived them of their Iraqi citizenship. The Ba'ath Party came and froze their property, transferring some of its management to Beit al-Taifa. After more negotiations, we were able to go inside Beit al-Taifa. There was emptiness, and it seemed like the owners left quickly.
They manage their business and property from this building.
The population of the Jews in Baghdad is only 40 people. Most of them are seniors. They have not had a rabbi heading their temple since the 1970s. However, the director of Beit al-Taifa is the rabbi's deputy, responsible for managing the Jewish affairs. We were not able to find him since he disappeared days before the war. According to the guard, the director is waiting for the situation to stabilize before deciding whether or not to return.
Mohammed Saeed Al-Sahhaf, the former Iraqi Minister of Information, has not been forgotten yet, has he? Many of us still remember him, especially the Egyptians, and that is probably why they produced a short movie titled I Am Not a Sahhaf. More in this review of the movie. The infidels, the puppets, the international mafia thugs. We will barbecue them on their stomach.
The display of Mohammed Saeed Al-Sahhaf, the Iraqi Minister of Information of Saddam Hussein's former regime, in such a sarcastic manner and in such a short time after the fall of Baghdad, illustrates the level of frustration that many Arabs feel after what Al-Sahhaf did. The use of his character in Arabic TV drama takes advantage of the controversy over his faith. Many Arabs feel that Al-Sahhaf betrayed them because he told lies up to the last second before Baghdad fell.
This short film is intended to portray a new phenomena in the entire Arab world, the Al-Sahhaf phenomenon. The Al-Sahhaf character is very controversial. He used to exaggerate a lot, and because of that, there was a need to condemn this behavior and the war, which was also based on exaggeration. What's going on? Everybody left except the two of us. I thought that you had a plan. Tell me, what's happening with the infidels? Actually, Commander Sir, it turned out that we are the infidels.
The film producer says that it was not intended for marketing purposes. Instead, the film's message is to warn the Arab people about the hypocritical officials who give mixed signals. They are spread throughout the Arab world.
When I played this character, I didn't just imitate him, I also added comedy to it. Truly, what Al-Sahhaf did was a kind of comedy. In this case, it was the art of exaggeration. Despite having no means to win the war, he made it look like the Iraqi army was winning and destroying the enemy. It was a joke, but really, a very bad one.
The story of the 15-minute film talks about a man that looks like Al-Sahhaf. The man decides to pretend that he is Al-Sahhaf, while for some reason, his brother also decides to pretend that he is the wife of Al-Sahhaf. However, the plot is discovered in a twisted way. The wife reports Al-Sahhaf to the police, thinking that he is the real Al-Sahhaf after a reward was announced for information leading to his capture. Al-Sahhaf decides to flee, so he starts running in the street in a scene that resembles what the real Al-Sahhaf did.
We did not attack or attempt to hurt anybody. We only tried to make a movie about Al-Sahhaf, who's a hero.
The lack of information and the sudden disappearance of Al-Sahhaf makes his character a very interesting one. Many more dramatic projects are expected to follow suit, taking advantage of two contradictory things: the serious nature of the event and the comic nature of the character. Tariq Al-Shami, Al-Madar, Abu Dhabi, Cairo.
Tehran's interim Friday prayer leader, Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, says any non-Iraqi ruler tending to interfere in that country's affairs should know that the Iraqi people in the long run will seriously confront such type of ruling.
Leading this week's Friday prayers in Tehran, the Expediency Council Chief Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani referred to Iran's neutral policy concerning the issue of Afghanistan and Iraq and underlined if the U.S. in the future starts meddling into Iraq's affairs, Iran will not remain neutral and that it will not allow foreign countries to use Iraq as a nest for invading other countries. Addressing thousands of worshippers congregating at Tehran University campus, Mr. Rafsanjani also reiterated that tribal disparities in Afghanistan lead to U.S. military presence in that country, adding the United States has not yet taken any measure in reconstruction of Afghanistan. Meanwhile, prior to Tehran's Friday prayer speech, the Speaker of the Assembly of Iraq's Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Muhammad Baqir Hakim, underscored that no effort will be spared to bring about independence, development, and reconstruction in Iraq, adding sharing good relations with neighboring states is among priorities of Iraqi Islamic Revolution's Assembly. Ayatollah Muhammad Baqir Hakim on Friday left Tehran for southern city of Ahvaz, from where he will set out for Iraqi city of Basra.
Another convoy of Iranian relief aid arrived in the Iraqi capital city of Baghdad on Friday. The aid consignments include 150 tons of foodstuff, powdered milk and clothing. Iran's Imam Khomeini Relief Committee has so far dispatched to Iraq nearly $350,000 worth of medicine. 14 truckloads and 14 tankers containing drinking water were also sent to the Iraqi city of Basra on Thursday. Iranian Foreign Minister Kamal Kharasi, on his two-nation tour of Luxembourg and Italy, met and conferred with Italian Premier Silvio Berlusconi late on Thursday, when the latter emphasized closer ties between Iran and the European Union will contribute to peace and stability in the international arena. The Italian Premier stated that Italy, during its periodic chairmanship of the European Union, will spare no effort to broaden Iran-EU ties. He also disclosed that Iran's stance on various international issues, especially those pertaining to the issue of Iraq, are balanced and transparent. The Iranian Foreign Minister, in turn, expanding on Iran's transparent nuclear programs, warned that international public opinion should not be deceived by certain biased circles which are opposed to enhancement of Iran's capabilities. The two sides also emphasized supporting the two countries' private sectors and successful holding of the upcoming session of Iran-Italy Joint Economic Commission in Rome. Mr. Kharasi on Friday also held talks with head of Italian Chamber of Deputies Pier Ferdinando Cassini, who termed Iran as a model of democracy in the region, and added that political buoyancy and mutual confidence between the Iranian nation and government was what he had witnessed during his visit to Tehran last year. The Iranian Foreign Minister returned home on Friday. Iran's Deputy Oil Minister for International Affairs, Ahmadinejad Hosseinian, met and conferred with Italian Oil and Natural Gas Minister Ram Naik in New Delhi on Friday. The Iranian official said feasibility studies are underway for establishment of Iran-India-Pakistan natural gas pipeline.
The pipeline is under the study by the consultant engineers for the onshore and offshore both. So the study is not completed yet. We are waiting for the result of the consultancy.
But the offshore will be more expensive, in fact.
Yes. Yes.
Enhancement of mutual cooperation in fields of oil and gas were reportedly high on agenda of Iran-India talks. Indian minister says the two sides have approached signing of deals on joint evacuation, that is excavation, in Iranian oil fields, referring to his country's access to modern technology of oil and refining. Ram Naik underscored India is ready to cooperate in modernization of Iran's oil refineries. Touching upon a memorandum of understanding inked in President Khatami's last year visit to India, Mr. Nejad Hosseinian said carrying out the said MOU will set the grounds for promotion of mutual cooperation in energy sector, including the establishment of Iran-India gas pipeline, besides excavation, exploitation and transfer of gas. Iranian Guardian Council says the amendment bill of presidential powers recently approved by the parliament is in violation of the constitution in 10 provisions. According to a statement released by the oversight body, authorizing the president to hand over its powers to the committee in charge of enforcement of the constitution and stoppage of implementation of certain judicial decrees which have been stipulated in the amendment bill are among cases that are in contradiction with the constitution.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation,